Welcome to Mile High Reefers. I'm Scott Anderson, and one of the big things I pride myself on with this tank is keeping it real. I share the good with the bad, and in this tank update, there's some bad to share. So to begin with, let's start with the bad and let's keep it real. In my last few tank update videos, the biggest problem I was having was with my coral being overgrown. And I kept saying I had some big fragging events coming up and that I was gonna have to make big changes to the tank. Inevitably, whenever you do that, inevitably, yes, I think I said that correctly. Whenever you do that, there are going to be unintended consequences. The biggest problem I ran into is when I fragged my big toadstool leather. Now, fragging leathers is always its own challenge. In fact, Fan from Tidal Gardens recently did a video about the struggles with fragging certain corals. I don't remember the title of it, but basically he said that he is also having problems with fragging leathers on a large scale. The problem is they don't like to attach the frag plugs, and they like to die off once they're cut. This really is a common thing, and it's one of the bigger challenges I've personally faced with fragging leathers. So for this tank, I pulled that big giant leather colony out and I cut a ring around the outside, and then I cut all of those pieces into small pieces and put them on frag gripper frag plugs. When I used the frag gripper frag plugs on a small scale, I had really pretty good results. And the results started off pretty good during this large fragging event. But over time, I noticed that at the base of the frag plug, the coral was pinched a little too tight and would start to kind of die off right there and blow off. Now, one of the other problems I was running into is I cut the pieces of coral into relatively small pieces, which also meant that I had a high rate of die-off. Of the 112 frags that I cut, I ended up with a total of 26 that survived. That's a terrible survivability rate, and my goal is to get to the point where I can frag and grow leathers on a large scale successfully. Not so much because I want to do a business fragging leathers, but it's one of those big challenges we have in the hobby that I personally want to figure out and work towards finding an answer that gets us to where we can frag leather successfully. With all of that die off, the frag tanks exploded to being covered with algae and cyanobacteria. There wasn't a lot I could do about it. I dosed ChemiClean. When I bought ChemiClean, I bought the smaller 2-gram dose, which is good for 350 gallons, which in the past has never been a problem. I would dose it and it would kill everything. Well, this time, there was just too much gunk in the water. It didn't do the job. So I had to buy more ChemiClean and dose again. Yeah, what a pain. We got rid of the cyano, and we still have a ton of algae that I'm gonna have to work on. So the frag tanks downstairs are back in a state that just saddens me. But we'll get them back to where they need to be. Now, the real consequences I had up here, well, my green bubble coral nearly died. I was really scared about this one. It was like making me physically sick watching this coral decline. That big, beautiful head pulled back, the skin underneath was peeling off, and it was just tight. You could see the skeleton underneath, you could see the shape of it. It was pulled in so tight. I really thought this coral was gonna die. It didn't. It pulled through. It doesn't look anywhere near like it used to, but I have full confidence that this coral is going to make a huge recovery. It'll be fine, but wow, what a shock. Everything else in this tank did pretty good. I saw some minor color changes, some minor growth changes. A couple corals looked a little stressed, but nothing really that bad happened. But my big green bubble nearly died from this. So going forwards, when I frag leathers, I've got to come up with a new plan. Next one getting cut up will be the kaleidoscope. And I have plans on how I'm going to do it differently. This time I'm going to cut it into bigger pieces, and then maybe we'll frag the frags later on once they're healed. I don't think I'm going to use frag grippers. I'm going to try a little different attachment method, especially since I'm using bigger frags. We'll probably use the frag grippers later on, once we're trying to make those final frags. But for the initial cuts, we're probably going to use something else. So that's all a work in progress, and you'll see how that goes. But I had to keep it real. This fragging event nearly crashed my tank. And then of course, I fragged up my huge colony of frog spawn and my Seriatopora and my Poecilopora that was up on top. I took those out, cut them up, and for the most part, that went pretty well. The frog spawn has really filled in and looks great. The stuff on the bottom's looking pretty good. Having that light open has really started making the coral look better. And I've rearranged up on top. The big loser in that was the bird's nest colony. I took this entire colony off, put it downstairs in the frag tank, and within a couple of days, it was dead. All I did was move its location. No other parameters changed. And the stuff up top, it's surviving. The stuff downstairs in the frag tanks that didn't get moved was completely unfazed. That's always been my problem with this Seriatopora. It grows real fast, but if you slightly annoy it, it dies real fast. And I have grown and killed multiple large colonies of this stuff over the years. Really, it doesn't surprise me too much that this happens. And honestly, I don't really care, because it really is just part of me keeping this coral. All right, so we've kept it real. It probably sounds like this tank is crashing. I've killed a ton of frags of leather coral. I had a cyano break because of that cutting. I killed a giant colony of bird's nest. I might not be the best guy to watch. No, I'm just kidding. The tank itself is doing fantastic. So let's dive in and let's see how the rest of the tank is doing. Overall, the tank is looking pretty darn good. All the fish are still alive, happy, healthy. No real changes there. Other than completely overgrown, my leathers are looking amazing, and my green Sinularia that's hidden in back is really growing in and filling that spot in well. My big giant clam is still big, giant, and amazing. The Monipora continue to look really good. I wish I could get the greens back out of that Spongoda, but who knows why it's doing what it's doing. But really, I think it's healthy, it's fine. I'm just not gonna worry about it. One of the corals I really haven't been able to show off on this channel is this Pectinia. It was back behind the frog spawn. Well, now that it's fragged, I can easily film it. I love this coral. It's got kind of a bluish center with this pink, with these pink stripes running through it. I love this Pectinia, and I'm glad it's easy to show on camera now. We also have some brand new coral to talk about. So on the right is a Favia that's called Mayan. I picked this up at Biggs Lagoon. Pretty cool coral, and it's supposed to change colors based on season. We'll see how that works in the aquarium environment. And then the one on the left is another big frag I picked up from Biggs Lagoon. It's just a really bright Favia with big green heads, and under certain lighting they almost look yellow. It was a cheap frag, and honestly, this is how I like to see a frag. Big, fat, healed heads. And then there's this weird coral. I picked this up at the Fish Crew. It was mixed in with some acros. Doesn't really look like any acro that I'm familiar with. In fact, it looks a lot like Tubernaria heroensis. And here's the base of that. Basically, it broke into two while I was trying to cut off the big frag disc that it was on. So I've put them in two different places to see what kind of light flow it's gonna want. I'm honestly not 100% sure what this coral is. It doesn't look like an acro, though it was sold to the fish crew as an acro. It looks a lot like Tubernaria heroensis, but not exactly like it. Tubernaria heroensis usually has these coral lights coming off in kind of a half moon shape, which we see on some of them, but Tubernaria heroensis also usually has some plating structure look to it. So it looks similar to this, but different. So honestly, I'm not 100% sure what it is. So if you know, put in the comments column, what is this weird coral? My other new coral in this tank is Japanese pink Nephthya. Now the lights came on a couple hours ago and this coral is slow to kind of open up and perk up, but as you can see it's open, it's just not standing upright yet. But it's a very pretty coral. It's pretty rare in the United States. So Japanese pink Nephthya is one I've wanted ever since I saw it in Jake Adams' tank. And thankfully, Jake was nice enough to give me this frag, which I am super excited about. Up on top, I lost my pink and purple plating money. It quite literally just disappeared on me. I'm sure it blew off and it's in the tank somewhere, but it'll probably die before I find it. But I use this opportunity to start putting some acros up here. So I got a little piece of green Slimer up on the left, and then that's where I relocated my immortal tort to. This is a really cool, super easy to keep, kind of purplish blue tort that I believe came from the Solomons. And there we go. Tank's looking pretty nice. Going forwards, the plan is basically to do nothing to it until everything's 100% recovered and I'm ready to frag again. So I won't be doing much upstairs, but I'll be addressing frag tank issues, algae issues downstairs. This really is just about getting my water chemistry and everything else back in line before we crack some more eggs to make more omelets. So, thanks for watching this episode of Mile High Reefers. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.